And as I was going through that journey, one of the things that I ended up encountering was an eating disorder. I had this specialty in eating disorders. And the more that I learned about the specific recovery process, not only for myself, but for future clients, the more I realized there were so many facets of wellness that were being propped up as the way to support yourself, but at the same time, like in the actual behind the curtain, it was actually making you feel worse about yourself so that you keep buying products so that people would keep making money off of you. We didn't really start to see bodies as being good or bad until we decided we was just going to start locking each other up for having different skin tones. The curves have been curving
Or since the beginning of
since
time.
the beginning of time. But at some point, all of a sudden, it was like, oh no, we cannot be big. We must be thin.
Mm,
Why? Because white men started to become attracted
mm.
to non-white women, and they were like, oh, we can't be attracted to them because we don't see them as humans. We know, regardless of the size of the body, that fat black bodies have been running the game also since
Okay.
the beginning of time. Oh, I've unfortunately gone viral before on the internet.
Okay.
And let me tell you, the people who ate me up the most were other black people.
I'm not even surprised. I'm just disappointed.
Hey, session family. How y'all doing? How y'all feeling? What is up? My name is Raquel Simmons, and I am a marriage and family therapist. And you are now tuned in to In Session's very own Uncomfortable Conversation podcast. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share. Enjoy the show.
Hey family, how you doing? How you feeling? What is up? Welcome back to another episode of Uncomfortable Conversations. Thank you so much for joining me on yet another week. Like, how you doing? Like I was just saying that I was rushing today. Life has just been all over the place, and it's been rough. Let me know in the comments. Is it just me? It can't just be me. I think it has a lot to do with the seasons changing. We're trying to like navigate and get all the things done. And I think a lot of people or a lot of situations are at like heightened, which is like could be a reason why things feel so like shifty and clients feel like they're at 1,000 and they're, you know what I mean? Anyway, let me know how y'all feel. All right. So as you guys can see, I am joined here by the beautiful Ashantis Jones. And listen, I'm gonna let her introduce herself, and I met her at one of her amazing Zoom events that she did, and I was super. I was just like, all right, this is what the podcast needs. Like, she is it. Why? Because of the energy, the fact that like it wasn't a boring Zoom call at all. It was actually because Zooms at night they could drag,
They can.
and I was so interested and captivated the entire time. So I
Mm.
was just like, all right, this is the energy that I need to come to speak to my people, our cousins. Like,
Yes.
yeah, I just was like, yeah, this is it because I appreciated the fact that I learned the entire way through. I felt connected and I just felt present the entire way through,
Yeah.
which is rare for
Oh
me,
my
especially
gosh.
when I'm doing like 1,001 things at all times.
Yeah.
The fact that you like demanded my attention, like the fact that I was just paying attention the entire time and
Yeah.
not focusing on doing a note or finishing up certain things or scrolling or lit like nothing. I was just like tuned in the entire time. I'm just like, oh, who is this woman and why don't I know her?
Oh my gosh. Wow. Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome. I'm
you.
like, who is this and why don't we know her family? What's going on? So I had to
Yeah.
come and introduce her. Duh.
Oh my God. Thank you. I feel like we didn't even talk about like my background, and yet I'm like, that was the most beautiful introduction I've ever received. Oh my goodness. So, okay. My name is Ashantis Jones. I use both she and they pronouns equally. I am a pre-licensed clinical therapist. I am a certified personal trainer,
Mm,
a group fitness instructor, and a wellness educator. And I have been in the wellness industry since 2012. That's when I
yeah.
first taught group fitness for the first time. And there have been times and periods where I've been out of it and in it
Mhm,
in these last 12 years. But right now, I really do focus majority of my time on being a wellness educator, and whether that's
mhm.
with one-on-one clients in the therapeutic coaching or training space, or that's in
Right.
a group environment like the workshop that we met at, or with a corporate partner, coming in and doing some learning and development. um, I just really believe that my purpose is to be able to support people with really
Mm,
becoming the fullest embodiment of themselves. And
mm,
the way in which I do that is through intersectionality, and more specifically through a weight inclusive approach.
mm,
Because in my own health journey, I was somebody that was trying to figure out, what does it mean to be a Black woman in this world? What does it mean to be a queer woman in this world? What does it mean to be just a person, period, in this world,
mm,
frankly. And as I was going through that journey, one of the things that I ended up encountering was an eating disorder. And
mm.
so, in my own recovery process, that was around the time I decided to go to grad school and to get my master's in counseling. And so,
Yeah.
I, had this specialty in eating disorders. And the more that I learned about the specific recovery process, not only for myself, but for future clients, the more I realized there were so many facets of wellness that were being propped up as the way to support yourself, but at the same time, like in the actual behind the curtain, it was actually making you feel worse about yourself, so that you keep
Wow.
buying products so that people would keep making money off of you.
Wow.
And when I started to see these connections between the way in which we talk about women's bodies, the way in which we talk
Mhm,
about Black women's bodies, especially, the way in which that intersects with gender and sexuality, the way that that intersects with slavery and
mm.
racism, and like, why are all of these things connected to each other? And
Yeah.
I'm just finding out that that's occurring.
Mm,
And so, really, I think through my own continued research and curiosity and needing to get more information to continue to see the, different connections through different systems of oppression,
mm,
that it really grounded me in this work. Because the reality is, this isn't stuff that I've always known. It's not like I necessarily grew up in a house or environment where these were always values that I upheld, but it's who I am now. And I feel very blessed to have gotten to a place where I actually enjoy being with myself by the age of 30. And I'm hoping that if I have gotten to this point, and I've gone through this journey, that if I can share my story and share the things that I've learned in the clinical environment as well, that hopefully it can help other folks have a little less turbulence while they're on this earth. Because the reality is, we're all going to go through stuff. Like, that is
mm,
just a part of life. But I am thoroughly surprised by how much more peace I have now that
mm.
my brain is not doing the self-sabotage.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Listen, I think we're done here. I think I told you guys, like, this is what I was saying when I introduced her. Like, I don't even know what I'm talking about today. Like, like, that was just enough. Thank you so much. It was so many points that you touched on that we're definitely going to unpack,
Yeah.
as we continue going. Like, I'm just like, did you read what I had going on here or what? Like, you just touched on everything. So, anyway,
I'm
no, thank you
sorry.
so much. Thank you so much. And you touched on so many things that I can relate to 1000%, which is like, is this girl me? Like maybe Joe, maybe we are cousins.
Maybe
Like,
we might
I don't
be.
know what this is about. Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
All right. So before we actually get into the
Oh yeah.
topics, we're gonna do one of our chat session questions. So
Perfect.
we do have individual and couples edition, but today we're gonna do individual. So I always shuffle the cards.
Oh, I don't know. I think it popped out on for a reason.
I'm like, okay, I don't know.
I'm good. I don't know. I feel like that might be the card.
That might be the card because it jumped out for
It
no
jumped out.
reason. Well, this one you kind of just said. So it says, "Who are you? Describe yourself."
Oh, wow. They said rinse and repeat.
Right. She just did this. No.
Okay.
We're
All
getting
right. We'll get
a good one.
We'll get a
But
different
the
one.
fact that that jumped out was wild.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay.
All right. We're going to do a different one.
All right.
I don't know about it. All right.
Shuffle.
All right.
Mm,
So I'm going to bring it closer.
yeah. The one that your
And
ring finger is touching.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Like,
Right there.
this one.
Perfection. Yes.
All right. I'm like, which one is that? All right. This one says, what have you been lying to yourself about?
Oh. Oh my. These cards have range, okay?
They're all over the place, but they're good.
But they're good.
They're
What
all
have I
over
been
the
lying
place.
to myself about? Well, since y'all want me to read myself, um, you know what? I think the biggest conversation I have been having with myself and, a little bit with my close circle, lately is that I am not capable of doing all of the things.
Mm,
And in this particular season of my life, unfortunately, my partner and I have just been like hit time after time after time
mm,
through, today's very rough job market.
mm.
And that fluctuation in financial stability, I think
Yeah.
has really led me to be like, I have to grind. I have to grind. This is the hustle
Yeah.
time. But the reality is this. I did the grind hard thing all throughout undergrad and then
Mm.
did it all throughout my master's program. And after I graduated my master's program, I said, you have to stop.
Yep.
You have to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And, life has shifted and changed in these last couple of years, but the reality is this, though I have not felt as financially secure, my bills are still being paid.
Okay, period.
And like there is still food on my table. And so even in this season of what feels so unknown,
Mm-hmm.
that I have to be realistic about the importance of rest, and
Mm-hmm.
that if I am not providing myself with rest and that I'm not really allowing myself to let the universe also truly be of support to me, then I'm gonna burn out. And like I've
Mm-hmm.
already done that
Yeah.
multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't need to go back for another round. I learned
Yeah.
my lesson. So now the actions must change.
Hello. Oh man, it's like I definitely feel that. Like undergrad, masters, it's like I'm just listening to you. I'm like, okay, you was tired.
I was,
Like it's a lot of work.
it is. It's a lot of work, and I worked full time during both.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
it was in undergrad, it was a little bit easier because everybody was staying up long hours, right?
Yeah.
But in my master's program, I wasn't in grad school at the same time any of my other close friends were in grad school.
Mm.
So I was the only one doing that. So they were like, let's go to a happy hour. And I'm like, sorry, I have theories. Like, can't go. I have to
Mm-mm.
learn how to be a therapist. On top of like working full time at the same university. So then it's like I'm spending 12 hours on
Oh,
campus
dang.
every day because I'm here from my 9 to 5. I'm here for my 5 to 6, which was me
Wow.
teaching group fitness, and then I got class 6 to 9.
Oh my goodness. Like, what do you, hello, who needs bills when you live there? Hello.
No, for a minute, I was like, can I just put a cot in my office because I'm
Oh
already
my.
here most of the time. What am I paying
Exactly.
rent for?
No reason.
No
Oh
reason.
my God.
No
I'm so
reason.
happy that you found like peace and you're at the point where you're able to listen to your body. I think in the
Mhm.
culture with even being a black woman, we already
Yeah.
gotta go hard. Like,
Yes.
just to survive, we already have
Mhm.
to do so much to make our presence known in so many different spaces and in so many different
Yep.
rooms, while also being a therapist who
Right.
has to consume all the things while also trying your best to give out your best, you know?
Yep. Right.
Oh my
Absolutely. And I mean, I think especially as the world continues to evolve and change in ways that are not always for the better,
God. Mm-hmm.
that our ability
Mm-hmm.
also becomes, I think, in some ways we need more support, and that like we are
Mm-hmm.
finally getting to a point where I think black women are starting to feel okay with saying that and saying that
Yeah.
like we cannot fix the world's problems, because the reality is like if we're not even the safest ones here, why are we fixing everything?
Oh
So
my
like
goodness.
but like how truly powerful are we that we are also at this point where we can have the vulnerability to say, no, the rest of y'all gotta like carry y'all weight for real.
Mm-hmm.
Doing it. And generation after generation after generation, like that stuff does stay in the body. We ain't doing it no more. I'm
No,
sorry. Y'all gotta do it. Y'all gotta do something for
you
yourselves.
do it.
Please.
I'm hanging in the towel. It's so
Please.
crazy. And I just like you mentioned you were 30. And so I'm 29.
Hmm.
So my question is like, do you feel like that's a 29, 30 kind of
Hmm.
mindset?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. You know what? I do think that one of the biggest differences for me between my mid 20s and my late 20s was starting to get more and more comfortable with the idea of centering myself versus centering other people.
Mm,
But to your point, I think that now that I am 30, that is really like it's grown some roots. It's
yeah.
not like still fresh,
Mm-hmm.
So like there's some more foundation to it, and that
Mm-hmm.
it certainly is gonna take a lot for somebody to really shake me at this point,
Mm.
because it is very much, I don't know if y'all have heard there's like that TikTok sound that's like what are you gonna tell me? What could you tell me? I've already been
Mm-hmm.
through it all.
Yeah.
And a little bit of that. It's like what I've already gone through all the trials and
Mm-hmm.
tribulations. I have asked God to stop telling me I'm his strongest soldier because I am not.
Return it.
But at the same time, what else y'all got? Like what
Mm-hmm.
haven't I already been through, go through on the daily? And truly at this point, me having so much sense of self and
Mm-hmm.
respect, I think, in myself is what allows that to continue to not be shaken, even if people try to say,
Yeah.
you don't know what you're talking about, or like try to change my value system.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. I asked that. Thank you. I asked that
Mm.
because I feel like I'm entering that like
Mhm.
realm where saying no was like I would throw like ready to throw
Yeah.
up. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
God forbid I say no to put myself first. And I
Hmm.
don't know, as I'm like approaching 30, I'm just like, no.
Yeah.
Like, no. It's a
And it's like
no.
before you even really even know you're saying it, your body is like, let me do it
Yeah,
for
like
you."
literally you could feel in every piece of your body where you're getting ready to say absolutely not. And
Yeah.
then I'm getting mad because I'm like, why do people keep putting me in positions that I have to say no?
Yeah. Yep.
It's like, why even come to me being just that ridiculous of an
Yep.
ass to
Yep.
even, but is it even a ridiculous ask when it was once a yes before, when I was once saying yes to everything before? You
Yes.
didn't notice?
Yes. That I feel like is one of the biggest lessons that you will learn when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to how it is that you can create boundaries and more importantly
Mm-hmm.
sustain them, because the reality is you could tell somebody my boundary is X, Y, and Z over and over again,
Mm-hmm.
but if every time they break that boundary there is no repercussion of any kind, they are learning that it is more than okay to break that boundary because nothing changes.
Right.
So I think with myself and with clients, have to remind, like, it's not just saying my boundary is X. That's only one part of it. The
Yeah.
second part of it is that actionable piece and, holding people accountable. And that's not just the person you've told the boundary to, that is also yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. We didn't even get into what we're doing yet, but I'm just like, this is good. This is good. So I'm interested and I want to get into both or all aspects of like what it is that you do, but getting into therapy, like what kind of motivated you to even do that?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with my anxiety disorder in high school.
Okay.
And so but in 2010, mental health conversations were not what they are
Non-existent. Yeah.
today. So it was very, what is an anxiety disorder? That's not real. Pray
Mm.
to Jesus.
From where? From where?
Huh?
Where were you getting those responses from?
I would say like between like family
Mm.
and media. That's really
Okay.
where I feel like those that came from. And like
Mhm.
more specifically, I think the pray it away
Mm.
being Black folks that are in an American Baptist church. Like Jesus got you. You
Mhm.
you go ahead and do your communion and your anxiety is gonna go away.
Yeah.
That's not how that works. Sorry to say. I had always been interested in seeing like would I be able to better understand my own mental health by studying psychology.
Mm.
And so when I went into undergrad, I originally went into a double major and I was going to be in the conservatory theater program because I got into performing arts in high school shortly after my diagnosis. And then, I'll do a double with psych. And so my
Mm.
idea at that point was how can I fuse what I have learned that had become really, coping mechanisms
Mm.
from theater and performing arts, and how can I tie that with psychology?
Right.
But then I got to undergrad and they said, because those are two of the hardest majors at the university, it's going to take you 5 years to graduate from undergrad. And I said, absolutely not.
No.
I am not paying for 5 years of DePaul expensive tuition. No, thank
Mm.
you. So I dropped my psychology double major before I even went to my first class.
Okay.
Because as soon as I found out they said it was going to be 5 years, I said, never mind.
Absolutely
Take
not.
it back. Take it back. I undeclare immediately.
Yeah.
So I really didn't think that I would do anything with that.
Mm-hmm.
But once I was working in theater professionally and realized I was going to make absolutely no money if I
Mm-hmm.
continued to do that, that's when I decided to go back for my master's in counseling. And then while I was there, I obviously realized that becoming a therapist meant that I also was not going to be making that much money.
Mm-hmm.
But surprisingly, still more than if I stayed in theater. So
Worked out, worked out.
So still good, but also went back to DePaul and had to pay that expensive tuition. So yeah, after, 3 years in my master's program, I finished with my MED, my Master's of Education and Counseling, and I did both
Mm.
the clinical mental health track and then also the college counseling and student affairs track because I thought I would take that and work in higher ed. But after working in higher ed during lockdown, I said, actually, I'm done here. I will not be back. And I'm standing by that.
What was so bad about it?
I think I just realized that all of the things that I was really interested about in higher ed, as far as supporting students and more specifically like supporting margin students of marginalized
Mm-hmm.
identities, that I was not going to be able to actually do the programming that I thought was necessary because
Mm-hmm.
one thing about higher ed, it's politics.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so, I think when I was there for undergrad, there was still like a little bit of, I don't know,
Yeah, still agree.
mystery behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it's going to be great. It's going to be like, I can't wait to be an advisor in the way that like I had really great advisors when I was involved in student
Mm-hmm.
organizations. Like, I can't wait for and then I became like a full staff member, and I was like, oh no, I don't want to know what's behind the curtain.
Yeah.
And yeah, so while I am very thankful for
Mm.
everything that I learned, I am also very thankful to no longer be employed by the university I attended.
Yeah.
And this is the first time they've
Congratulations
heard
on
me
making it
say
out.
it.
Congratulations on making it out.
Thank you.
First, like you did it.
Thank you. I'm still a little bit fresh because they did get me back for a second. I was teaching group fitness, so they
Mm.
like sort of reeled me back in, but I left in August. And I was
Okay.
like, no, I'm done for real. Like y'all got 10 years out of me. I'm done.
Okay. I was like, are you sure?
I'm done. I wrote it on LinkedIn and everything.
Okay, it's official now.
It's
Sorry.
official. I'm not going back.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what got me into being a
Okay. Thank you. All
therapist.
right. So how did you and you talked about your experiences with your eating disorder, but
Mhm.
how did that then translate into you being a trainer?
Yes. So, part of, not for everybody, but for many people, part of the recovery process from an eating disorder or disordered eating is also a recovery process with exercise because they are just very closely connected, especially
Mm-hmm.
within a lot of restrictive eating disorders.
Yeah.
They're often used as kind of a supplement in addition to whatever the goal is of the restrictive eating behaviors.
Okay.
And so for me, because I had taught group fitness prior to my ED and was very much utilizing fitness as a means to cope throughout my ED.
Mm-hmm.
I realized between that and the fact that I was also starting to experience very severe chronic pain that like something was not adding up and I needed to, kind of get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
And so when I started to learn more about weight inclusive approach,
Mm-hmm.
or at that time it was really being coined as like anti-diet approach
Okay.
versus a weight-centric approach,
Mm-hmm.
I realized that while I was learning a lot of beneficial things and providing folks with beneficial fitness opportunities as a group fitness instructor, that I could actually think bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is that when I decided to then not only, start to teach group fitness again, but then go ahead to get my certification as a personal trainer,
Mm-hmm.
that I realized there are not many fitness professionals who actually specialize within eating disorder recovery. And so, because there
Mm,
aren't many fitness professionals that have that specialty, a lot of times folks leave eating disorder recovery, whether that be in like an inpatient or outpatient environment, or just, something that they did specifically with a one on one clinician or a team of other clinicians. That there's somebody there, a registered dietitian, to talk about the nutrition aspects. There's mental
mm,
health practitioners there to talk about the trauma aspects, but
mm.
there is no fitness professional to help them figure out how can I still incorporate fitness in my life without it being connected to these restrictive behaviors.
Mhm.
And so, since nobody was doing it, I said, why don't I do it? And obviously, once I started to really get into it, I realized I wasn't the only person doing it,
Mm.
which is good and great. And I wish that there were more multidisciplinary clinicians like myself. And there are some. I often have seen folks that are both certified personal trainers and registered dietitians,
Okay, great.
but not as many folks are therapists and working in the clinical mental health space and also working within this fitness space, but they are so integrated.
Yeah.
And me having the opportunity to work in the boutique fitness space after I left higher education,
Mm.
I really was able to put so many dots together because
Wow.
I was living in it versus looking at it from like a theoretical framework.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, like, a lot of people don't necessarily turn like their own, like, I'm look say, like if they're looking for something, they'll just keep looking and not create it. And so
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, kudos to you for actually like seeing the whole in a service that needs to be provided and then creating
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Huge.
I mean, honestly, I think that it certainly wasn't like intentional from the jump, but
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of like as I layered different education on top of each other versus like looking at them all as completely separate topics, I
Mm-hmm.
was really starting to see how that those connections were being made. And
Okay.
even, once I started studying for my certification for personal training, it's like, okay, we're talking about this and like what's happening from a physical standpoint, but the reality is that your body and your mind are not separate. We often
Yeah.
think about them as separate things, and we're like, well, if you have body physical issues, this is who you go to, versus if you have like brain mental issues, this is who you go to.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not disconnected from one another. They
Mm-hmm.
are very much integrated with each other. Without our brain, we
Yeah.
cannot move our body. Like
Yeah.
that's just right. Like it doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so once I was able to start to see how connections were being made, again, whether that be for good or not, um, it was kind of one of those things. It was so hard to unsee that I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I, I guess I got to do something about it.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. Like, thank you for all that you do.
Yeah.
Especially because this is a huge topic. Like,
Yeah.
just like, hey, if you can just speak a little bit more about like body positivity and like
Yeah.
being like respectful. One of the words you use is body positivity and body respect.
Yes. So I'll sort of explain the differences between the two because I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times the language is like used to mean the same thing, but they technically have different, meanings. So when I speak about body positivity is really focused around like you have a body, I have a body, we should all be thankful we have bodies. And like
Mm-hmm.
that is cool. And the reality is, some people don't ever really get to that place of, I like my body and think it's cool and
Mm-hmm.
awesome and, whatever for a plethora of reasons. But even if we are not feeling positive about it, we can respect it.
Mm.
And body respect tells us that we have a body. It's our
Mm-hmm.
home, it's our vessel to be like in this earth, in this
Mm-hmm.
life, living our
Yeah.
life, right? Like, you don't know anybody who doesn't have a body. Like, I mean, maybe you do,
I
but
mean,
like,
you're right.
everybody I know got a body. So you gotta have some amount of respect for this vessel that's keeping you here, because if
Yeah.
you don't have respect for it, then like, how are you really gonna be living this life? And I think
Mm.
oftentimes people will say, well, if you have respect for your body, then that means you're treating your body like a temple and this and this and that. But like, that really disconnects from how integrated our bodies are already within like nature and the earth and just like being. And
Mm.
like, you saying I have to treat my body like a temple, like, where is that really coming from and what does that really mean? Because when you look at it from a sociological standpoint, a
Mm.
lot of the things that we um promote or see as high value today, if
Mm.
you go like the why of that to the why of that to the why of that all the way backwards, it's probably got something to do with white supremacy. And I
Mm.
don't know about you, but in 2024, as a black woman, one thing about me, if I can figure out how not to like hold up white supremacy, I'm gonna do that because I
Mm-hmm.
don't like it and it's
Nope.
not good for me. And so if I can divest from it in any way that allows me to still have some semblance of safety in this world, that
Yeah.
is what I'm going to do. Because the fact of the matter is, we didn't really start to see bodies as being good or bad until we decided we was just going to start locking each other up for having different skin tones.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Because if you look back, right, there was
Mm-hmm.
no, oh, we never saw fat bodies in art.
Which is not true.
Like, exactly. Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
That the curves have been curving
Or since the beginning of
since
time.
the beginning of time. But at some point, all of a sudden, it was like, oh no, we cannot be big. We must be thin.
Mm.
Why? Because white men started to become attracted
Mm.
to non-white women, and they were like, oh, we can't be attracted to them because we don't see them as humans. So what can we do to make them not human?
Mm.
We can say that all of these characteristics that are inherently non-white are unhealthy, and then that's how you justify being racist.
Mm.
That's how you justify the beginnings of things like eugenics.
Yeah.
When in reality, we know, regardless of the size of the body, that fat black bodies have been running the game also since
Okay.
the beginning of time.
Hello.
So, how is it that you can sit up here and say there are things that are just inherently unhealthy about your being, but y'all don't actually have any scientific data to back that up? If you look at the why of the why of the why, it is
Mhm.
pseudoscience.
Yeah. There's no
It's them
facts.
saying, oh, well, we don't want to think that black people are human. So, remember when we were 3/5 of a person?
Mm. Oh God.
Do you like, we still are having ramifications of that today, because the
Mm-hmm.
reality is like, you're still seeing the first black doctor.
Yeah. There's a lot of first black. Some like.
So, if we were never in the room to have the conversations and the nuance that we know needed to be had,
Mm-hmm.
do you think they were paying attention to us when they came up with all of the diagnoses that you can receive today?
No.
No. Unfortunately, which I think we really, really got to learn during, lockdown, a lot of people are working in the medical field that are racist,
Mm.
and they don't take that off with them when they go to work.
Mm.
So when a black person comes in and they're racist, guess what? That person is now experiencing medical racism. That person
Yeah.
is now experiencing medical bias. What is that going to lead to? Folks not getting the diagnoses or the medical care that they need.
Mhm.
So now you're not getting the diagnosis that you actually have, or you're not getting the care that you need. That obviously, we're not looking at it from a preventative manner, which means it's going to get worse. So your health is slowly declining, and in your head you're being told, well, you're the problem, you're not doing everything that we tell you to
Mm.
do, we need you to eat like this, we need you to exercise like this, but also if you decided to have kids, well, that's your fault that you didn't have birth control, except for now we live in a country where you can't get abortions or utilize birth control. So we're making you have kids, but we're not making sure that you're paid enough to feed yourself and those kids. But
Mhm.
if you don't feed those kids correctly, that's your fault. And we're going to call DCFS on you. And now you have a case. What?
Oh my gosh.
But I
Hello.
know that you know from working in this field, it can happen very quickly.
It's the quickest cycle. The quickest cycle.
Very quickly.
Wow.
And so you got people pathologizing things
Mm.
about themselves that aren't even actually issues.
Mm-hmm.
But like, of course, we as Black people are being taught anti-Blackness. We live in an anti-Black society. So then we have to do, so not only did you teach it to us, now I gotta unlearn all of it.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I'm
Unlearn,
sitting over here
yes.
going, oh my God, if I learn one more thing about myself is actually rooted in anti-Blackness, I'm gonna lose it.
Listen.
Because the audacity of y'all to do this.
Oh my goodness. I couldn't have said it better myself. I couldn't have said it better myself. So what do you think about like the social media aspect of how we should
Yeah.
I'm like the social media aspect and um even like the perception of we should look a certain way and more specifically from our own community.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, okay, so here's one thing
Mhm.
people may or may not know. I've unfortunately gone viral before on the internet.
Okay.
And let me tell you, the people who ate me up the most were other Black people.
I'm not even surprised. I'm just disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just
And it was because I was talking about weight loss and its connection to anti-fat bias and anti-fat bias's connection to racism. Obviously, if you hear a 30-second clip of me saying that, which the person who chose to like put this on the internet, they took it from my own social media, me responding to somebody,
Mhm.
a like alt-right hate page, and then they threw it on Twitter, and then fire just spread from there.
Wow.
And so in the small clip, I completely understood how that could throw people for a loop, but I also, in this age of social media and being a consumer, if I hear something and I'm like, feels like there's some context missing, I'm gonna go and look for it before I speak on it.
Mhm.
But that's me. That's not most people.
No,
And
it's not.
so a lot of Black folks were like, what is she talking about? Like, we're big backs and we need diabetes is happening in Black families. Let me tell you
What?
something.
What?
Social media will rot your brain into thinking that Blackness is inherently unhealthy. It's not. Our
Mm-mm.
cultural foods are not inherently unhealthy.
Mm-mm.
Our cultural practices are not inherently unhealthy. What
No.
is inherently unhealthy is redlining.
Mm. Hello. Wow.
And so I think in this age of social media, it's so easy for so many people to come on and say, I'm an expert, and
Mm-hmm.
to use language that makes them seem like they
Yeah.
actually do have some level of credibility and expertise. And
The
unfortunately, those
insight.
folks are preying on people. They
Mm-hmm.
are doing whatever they need to in order to make money off of people. And I really, it's legal, but it is not ethical.
Mm-mm.
And so I think, when you hear certain stuff over and over again, and you hear you should always be aspiring to lose weight or to have a body like this, your measurement should be X, Y, and Z. You're never gonna get a man if you don't da 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 da. Right? Like when you're hearing those things consistently, that
It's embedded.
that is comes embedded. And so no, you may not be in a place where you're experiencing disorder eating or eating disorder, but like this girl I just saw on TikTok say a couple days ago, a lot of us have body dysmorphia, and instead of going to talk to a therapist about it, we keep calling surgeons.
Mm. Ah.
But why? And so then you have to ask yourself, well, why would that be? Because when it comes down to it, and you hear women talk about the ways that they are empowering themselves, a lot of times it's, well, I changed this and I changed this and I changed that.
Mm.
And then I became blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah. But we also know that that's not true,
Mm-hmm.
because we see people go and do a little tweak here, go and do a little tweak there, and then they can't stop, because guess what?
Mm.
When you don't get to the root of the issue, you will
You
always
always,
find something else.
yeah. Bingo.
There
That
will
is
always
it.
be something else.
Mm-hmm. I remember having like going to I think I went to like just a regular like clinic because I just
Hmm.
needed a physical for work.
Yeah.
And the doctor had it's clear surgery there. Like you know, and she had the nerve to ask me, well, tell me about my weight, and then say, oh, are you interested in getting like the sleeve?
Mm-hmm.
Are you crazy? First off, I walked out of there. I was so furious because one, are you crazy? Like, are you dumb? Like, no, there's nothing wrong with my body,
Yeah.
and there's like to say, why don't you refer me to a nutritionist? Why
Mm-hmm.
don't you ask me how I'm doing in certain areas? Like to
Yeah.
automatically just go there because
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to like to all those who botch their bodies or cut, tuck, all this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you think? But that's not me. Like that's not
Yeah.
where I'm at with it.
Yes. Yes. And I
So
think that that is important, because the reality is, like, first and foremost, I'm always going to tell a client, you have bodily autonomy. You can do whatever you want to your body.
mm-hmm.
It is your body.
And if you
And
don't get to the root, it's like, what are we
exactly.
doing?
Right. And, it's really easy for it's really easy to believe that there's a pill, there's a surgery, there's a
Mm-hmm.
diet, there's a specific trainer, there's a specific whoever that's going to give you the magical solutions and finally make you like yourself.
Yeah.
But that simply is not real. And every single person who tries to sell you their course, coaching program, nutrition program, whatever.
Oh my God, do you remember like the tummy teas things? Like that was
Yeah,
such an error for no reason.
right. Like people were their digestive systems were messed up. And
Yes,
some
I'm
people's permanently,
wow.
permanently. And so, and you did that for what? Because
And received what? No
rando told
results.
you was gonna have different curves, and if you had different curves, that was gonna mean that what at what cost? And I
Right.
think that's a really the most important piece of like body respect is like you're
Mm-hmm.
doing these things, and at what cost? Is it supporting you, or is it actually further harming you? Is
Yeah.
it aligning you with your values, or is it actually taking you out of alignment with your values?
Mm.
Because the reality is, I think that oftentimes people are like, well, the only reason I really care about my weight is because I want to care about being healthy. Okay, caring about being healthy, cool. But like, how can we really care about being healthy as Black people when we're experiencing racism every day?
Mm.
Because guess what? Experiencing racism every day, no matter how much you experience it and how much therapy you receive, you are never going to become immune to feeling that
No,
and
you're
the
not.
impacts of it. So you could be eating like Tabitha Brown, but still not feel like the healthiest person in the world
Yeah.
because you aren't in a world that it makes you inherently feel safe.
Yeah.
So, like, why don't we actually start there? And why don't we
Mm.
start at the systemic pieces versus always the individual, the individual, the individual? Because
Yeah.
we already know if somebody's born into poverty, the odds of them continuing the cycle of poverty are very high.
Very high.
So you're
Yeah.
asking somebody to figure out how to make $5 out of 15 cents and then also but you can only eat these certain kinds of foods, but also you can't afford
Mm.
those foods. Those foods maybe are not even accessible. Do you live in
Yeah.
a food desert, which really should be called food apartheid? Because it's not that food don't it's not the food the food exists.
Yeah.
There is a very specific choice to not put it in certain locations and areas.
Hmm. There's a reason why there's like not a Whole Foods in certain areas, but there are in
Right.
different.
Right. Like, me, I live on the north side of Chicago, and
Hmm.
so being black on the north side is interesting, because I get to see the ways in which redlining and segregation have
Mm.
truly impacted the city.
Wow.
But at the same time, I also see the difference between how far I have to drive for a grocery store versus my cousin
Mm.
who lives on the south side.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
and like, why is my gas cheaper
Mm.
than Hyde Park?
Yeah.
That don't make sense.
Yeah.
That don't make sense. So this is all, but
Wow.
these are all intentional things. And I think it's kind of just like waking people up to understanding that intentionality and understanding that they have a voice in being able to create change, even if that
Hmm.
is the system that currently exists.
Yeah. Wow. I'm like, just like everything that you're saying is obviously true. And it's something that we don't necessarily take heed and kind of converse about
Hmm.
because people don't even notice. There's a lot of
Right.
people that are so washed into their environment that they're not
Hmm.
even realizing that there's more outside. And I think that is a problem as well, just because
Hmm.
these are the people that are penetrating the young girls to think
Hmm.
that this is it, or
Yes.
like this is the way. I mean, younger and younger. Like I'm like, when
Hmm.
I was younger, this wasn't obviously a thing, and now these young kids are like looking forward to shape shifting their body and looking
Hmm.
forward to looking in, and they're super impressionable, like more than
Very.
I could ever imagine that this would be the
Yeah.
case. And I think, yes, it's the people in their community and it's the access that they have.
Mhm.
And so what would you think, or what would you say to like to the point of like the younger girls
Yeah.
being influenced by this negative aspect?
I think that the beautiful thing that has come out of the body liberation movement, in some ways, pseudo being brought mainstream, unfortunately, through mostly white women stealing it and calling it
Mm.
body positivity, but I digress.
Yeah.
That there are more people doing this work for, body advocacy
Yeah.
than just me, right? Like I
Thank
am but
goodness.
a honestly goldfish
Mm.
inside of such a wonderful community of fat liberationists and
Mm.
body liberationists, and so many of them are black women or other black folks, and so many of them maybe aren't black but also are folks that come from the global majority and
Yeah.
we've been able to find community and compassion for each other. And so with that in mind, I think it's so important for people to follow what you want to flow into your life. And like
Mm.
for me, I think one of the biggest changes that I made with social media was when I had this discovery and understanding that me continuing to follow somebody like Kim Kardashian was only
Mm.
gonna continue to further warp my brain.
Yeah.
Baby got the unfollow, and so
Listen.
did really anybody else that was, consistently talking about how they were feeling better because they were smaller, or how they were feeling
Mm,
better because they were eating less, or how they were feeling better because they weren't sleeping, or how they were feeling better because, they were doing all of these things that actually like are inherently unhealthy but have like been cloaked into making
yeah.
people think that they're healthy habits. And once I unfollowed a lot of that and replaced it with people speaking about body trust, body respect,
Mm,
advocacy, and fat liberation, then that was what I was taking in. So I was able
yeah.
not only to continue to find neutrality with my sense of self, but also learn more from these other folks that were, providing community engagement.
Right. Definitely important. Like understanding your algorithm. Like
Yeah.
whatever you're searching or whatever you see, and I don't know how, I haven't really understood, but these phones are listening. This everything's just
Mm-hmm.
listening to every conversation. And
It
so being
really
able to identify like what's going on within your algorithm and changing it immediately.
mm-hmm.
Immediately. Trust me, these people 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, they're not gonna realize that you're following them.
Yeah,
Like,
it's so true.
they're not gonna even realize it. So the only person that is being affected by certain things like that is you.
Yep. Yes. And I always encourage people too that like if you have somebody who really you're like this, I've been following this girl for like 10 years, but like yeah, I think some of her content is warping my brain a little bit. You could just mute her. Like if for
Mm-hmm.
any reason you're so, engaged within that community that you're like I still want to be able to give them my follow, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
you can mute people. You
Mm-hmm.
can mute them.
I mute a lot of people, so
And
you could definitely.
yeah, I think it's okay to remember that, like, you
Yeah.
can follow people, you can mute people, you can hide people for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
There are other avenues outside of like a block.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't always have to be like the most aggressive, the
Mm-hmm.
opposite way.
Yeah.
Um, but the reality is, yeah, anybody that at some point I was like, ooh, I'm catching myself looking at their stuff and then
Mm-hmm.
feeling a certain type of way about me. That
Yeah.
was okay, that feeling was heard, it was felt, they gotta go.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah. That's a real thing because even the most positive, like I'm not gonna say never, but I haven't in a very long time had any ideas about the way I looked and things like that, like negative ideas
Yeah.
until, but it has popped into my brain. I have, and I don't know what kind of influenced it. It possibly could have had a lot to do with the medical experience that I recently
Mhm.
had. And I'm sure it had a lot because now I was looking at myself like, it's because it's like, is it that big of a deal that a doctor
Mhm.
would ask me if I want to get a gastric sleeve? Like, am I a huge, like, you know what I mean? Like, it
Well,
was crazy.
but then that's also I think where it's like that's why it's so important to have the conversation in the context,
Mm.
because people will say, "Oh, well, their BMI, their BMI, their BMI."
Because,
BMI has been disproven. The American
hello,
Medical Association
I've been
said
like
we shouldn't be
morbidly
using
obese.
it, and then they still do.
Exactly. Exactly. Do you know how many ages I've been technically morbidly obese?
It's
And
not
I
even real.
feel
It's not even real.
fine.
Like the quote unquote obesity epidemic, you're measuring obesity through an equation that a mathematician made up
Mm-hmm.
hundreds of years ago and said, don't use it the way we're using it. So
Literally.
if we know that the equation shouldn't be used this way, why are we still pretending that it actually is giving us any actual metric of health? It's not. Regardless of how somebody's body looks on the outside, the fact of the matter is that does not tell you anything about that
Mm-mm.
individual. How somebody's
Right.
body looks doesn't tell me what access you have to mental health services, doesn't tell me what access
Mm-hmm.
you have to a home, doesn't tell me what access you have to physical care, a doctor, a dentist, an eye doctor. It doesn't tell me any of those things. It doesn't tell
Mm-hmm.
me your cholesterol. It doesn't tell me your blood sugar, your A1C. Like it, I can't learn none of that by
Nothing.
just looking at you.
Nothing at all. Nothing at all.
Nothing. So if you
Mm.
want to give people this quote unquote advice, okay, but like, can we also talk about the side effects around a gastric sleeve that a lot of people don't talk about? Can we talk about the fact that like most people are not going to be able to get the leave they need from work in order to even recover from
Mm-hmm.
a major surgery
And
like
even
that?
the recovery, right? And the most people are not educated on the proper recovery and the fact that you actually have to shift and change a lot of your lifestyle. But if you don't move to where the access to that lifestyle even makes sense, you're then putting
Like,
yourself right back into the same
right.
position.
Right. And so it's just it's less about, you know, everything that we know is completely wrong and more that everything that we know has been taught to us outside of the context in which it actually lives.
Mm.
And these types of educational moments are meant to provide the context of where it lives so that you can actually make an educated decision for
Yeah.
yourself. Because the reality is, if I knew so much of what I know about this world now, 15 years ago,
Game changer.
I can't even imagine the
Mm-hmm.
difference.
Yeah.
Like, I can't even begin to fathom that.
Mm-hmm.
But like, because I spent the first 23 years of my life worried about how I looked and if it was thin enough and if it was black enough and if it was this enough, I wasn't paying attention to what was going on around me.
At
I wasn't
all.
paying attention to the things that I had the ability to change. It wasn't until I
Mm.
got out of that I'm not enoughness that I was like, wait a minute, it's a scam. They are purposely trying to drive us all up a wall so we won't
Mm-hmm.
notice we're being robbed.
Oh my goodness.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. All right. How? And this is like, I want to wrap up because I want to be mindful of your time because this is a conversation. Listen, I can sit
It
back
could
and we
go
can literally,
forever. Yeah.
yeah. How did you become so confident in yourself and who you are?
Yeah. I really feel like my confidence has come from realizing that all of the people that have come before me unfortunately lived somehow in an even more racist, even more
Mm,
sexist, even more
mm,
homophobic, even more fat phobic, even more, right? Like all of the things. And yet they survived
mm,
at least long enough to like allow me to get here. And so I think knowing that despite all of those things that they were able to still find purpose in their lives and their
mm,
journeys, even through all of the pain, that like it is now so important for me to be able to break so many of the generational cycles that I know have maybe not allowed all of the people who came before me to really reach like their truest, highest, most authentic
yeah,
self. And that although we are still going through it, I have
mm,
the opportunity to really level up. And
mm,
that leveling up, I don't think is coming from that, like, when you're black, you gotta try twice as hard, you know, you gotta
mm,
grind kind of thing, but more from a, you have tried to deny the women that have come before me over and over and over again their
mm,
humanity.
yeah.
And that stops now.
Okay,
And that
great.
never continues.
Mm,
Because again, had I known what I know now 15 years ago, my life would be so different.
for sure.
And now I'm like, that cannot continue within my family and within, you know,
Mm,
whether that be like my blood relatives or chosen family, like where that cycle, that piece of not believing in your sense of self from the get-go, that's done, that stops. Because the fact of the matter is, like, I can remember one of the first times that, like, I looked at my body and I said it maybe is a little bit different from other people, and like I can see that seed
Mm.
being planted and how it grew and took me away from being able to really be present in the moment.
Wow.
And now that that weed has been ripped up,
Mhm.
once it left, it's not coming back. We got every chemical, every weed protectant in the
Get it
market.
out of
Okay.
here.
And I think, being able to have conversations like this and hear people say, like, I feel seen and heard makes me feel like, okay, what I'm doing is we're doing the positive things. We must be doing something right, because
Mhm.
the want, the need continues to be there. So if
Wow.
that want and need continues to be there from others, I think then it makes me have a higher confidence in myself and knowing that, like, I am on the right path.
Mm. Nice.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I'm like, just so many gems. Listen, I forgot that I was even having a podcast because I'm just like so into it. But there's so many gems. Like, I don't know, y'all need to pay attention because I'm like, oh yeah, there's more people here. Listen, y'all need to pay
Yeah.
attention because the amount of gems that has been dropped, I'm just like, wow. Like, I'm in awe because it's so true. And it's so refreshing to hear it from
Mhm.
someone else's mouth other than my own, you know?
Real.
just,
So real.
just to hear
It
it
can be lonely out here.
from the small little population. It's like,
It
does
can
anybody else
be.
hear me?
Yeah. 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 Especially, I think, in the clinical mental health space, because it's like,
Mm.
this is how to be a therapist. And it's like, well, if the people who came up with this were only white people, maybe there's a different way that we can do this that's still right, but, like,
Literally.
isn't the way that old bald white man said. Like, why is it always an old white bald man?
Why is it always the old
Other people have good ideas,
Literally.
y'all.
Right. All right, so we're gonna get to the last segment here. It's called chat session. So in our chat session, and you guys remember, you guys can email me. It'll all be in the description below, and or write me on Instagram. And so for this chat session, someone wrote, I want to start my own business, but I keep second guessing myself on moving forward. Any suggestions with it?
Wow. Yes, actually, I
Okay.
do. Because I was in that spot where
Mm.
I was like, I'm doing this stuff, but, like, I have a corporate job that, pays my bills, right?
Yes.
But now for, I don't know, about 18 or so months, I have not had a corporate job, and I am 100%, self-employed between
Mm.
what I'm doing with training clients and, the private practice that I'm seeing therapy clients out of. And I think the most important thing for feeling that foundation and readiness to start a business is, number one, just do it.
Mm.
But number two, really take your time to do it. And so for me, I knew that in my last corporate job, I knew that I was going to get laid off just because of, like, how the economy was doing its
Mm.
thing. I was like, it's coming. I don't know when it's
Yeah.
coming, but it's coming. And I tried looking for other jobs and wasn't landing anything. And I said, I think it's because the universe is trying to tell me that it's time to, like, go off and do this on my own. And so I took that time to build my foundation. So I'm like,
Mm.
I'm figuring out how I'm going to take people's money and invoice them, and what is my logo going to be, and what is my business name going to be. And I was doing all of that stuff while I was still working my regular job so that the bills were still being paid while I was laying that foundation. But then the day when they said, like, hey girl, your
Mm.
job is not going to be a job anymore, you got to scram,
Yeah.
I was already prepared for that. And
Nice.
so, yeah, so I think my suggestion is get your ducks in a row now, figure out your operational foundation as far as how you want to run your business. Make sure it's profitable.
Mm-hmm.
before you jump, with 2 feet, because I think sometimes people are like, they don't realize how much money it takes to really, run and sustain the growth of a business, regardless if it's product or service based. So,
Yeah.
do your calculations, make
Yeah.
sure it's going to be profitable, start to build up your operational
Yes.
foundation. And then when, you feel like all of that is ready to go, dive in.
I love that. I couldn't have said it more better. I agree with that. Just do it. Don't overthink it for sure. If you have that, I think this is the first step to this person just saying like, I want to start it. A lot of people don't even have that. A lot of people are very comfortable where they are, which is
Yeah.
completely fine.
Yeah.
So the fact that you know what you want to do and you just work towards it, like figure it out, become very educated on the who, what, when, why, how,
Yeah.
all the things, and just stay dedicated to your why in
Mm.
order for you to continue to stay motivated in your purpose.
Yes.
The moment you
Yes.
start losing your why, it becomes very gray areas and it
Mm-hmm.
becomes very hard.
Yes. Definitely agree.
So before we end, this is the last question, the last little bit, but we end each session with I don't know who needs to hear this, but so you'll finish the sentence.
Okay.
So,
Um, ooh, okay. I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you wouldn't say it to the person you love most in the world, please don't say it to yourself.
mm, mm, I like that. I like that. Oh, I'll do mine. I don't know who needs to hear this, but take your time.
Mm,
Take your time. Things are not in a rush.
yeah.
Understand who you are, understand your body, understand your circumstances, and stay curious.
Mm-hmm.
Stay curious. Stay grounded in your why.
Yes.
All right, so that's it. Like, if can you let everybody
Yay.
know how to find you, where to
Yeah.
find
Oh,
you,
yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
single, when you have anything upcoming? I know you do your Zoom
Yeah,
class,
I have a
all
couple
of
of
it.
things. Yeah, so if you want to follow me on social media, my handle is I am Ashantis on everything that
I
I am
also
on.
put it all in the description too.
Yeah, yeah. So you can follow me on social. I also just last week actually released a new nutrition meal prep program with a registered dietitian that is a friend of mine. So you
Oh, good.
can
I missed
you can
that.
check us out at body.kind.nutrition on
Mm.
Instagram and TikTok. Learn more about that. And then yeah, if you want to see me on like the fitness side of things, I'm teaching virtually for the most part these days. So if you follow me on social or you join my email list by visiting my website, ashantisjones.com, then you'll be able to be in the know on everything that is coming up. And yeah, those are really the main spots to meet me.
Nice. I'm gonna put all that in the description because I'm
Yes.
going to look at the nutritionist thing that I don't understand how I missed. So I'm gonna put all of that in the description below. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank
Yeah. Yes, of course. Thank you so much for
you.
having me.
All right, family, this concludes our episode of Uncomfortable Conversations. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. We'll see you next time.